They really knew me. This would change. They really knew me. This would change. Visual, group of friends laughing in soft focus. You don't feel fake exactly, but you don't feel fully real either. Why does belonging sometimes feel like performance? And why does it happen most around the people you actually care about? Hold that question, because the answer isn't about confidence, it's about identity. I2. Problem deep dive. It shows up in small moments. You're about to share an opinion, but you soften it. You're excited about something, but you downplay it. You adjust your humor slightly depending on who's there. Visual, person pausing before speaking. After you leave, you replay it. Was that too much? Did I sound weird? Do they see through me? You don't feel hated. You feel unstable, like your personality shifts depending on the room. With one friend, you're thoughtful and deep. And with another, you're light and sarcastic. In groups, you're careful. And the strange part? All of those versions feel partially true, but none of them feel complete. Over time, this creates a quiet identity tension. You start wondering, which one is the real me? Psychology has a term related to this, self-concept clarity. It describes how clearly and consistently you understand who you are. When self-concept clarity is low, identity feels flexible, sometimes too flexible. Not because you're fake, but because your nervous system learned that flexibility equals safety. And that pattern doesn't start with friends. It usually starts much earlier. 3. Reframe. Here's what matters. You're not an imposter. You're adaptive. Somewhere in your past, reading the room wasn't optional. It was intelligent. Maybe approval felt conditional. Maybe moods were unpredictable. Maybe belonging required calibration. So your brain learned to scan, to adjust tone, to adjust energy, to adjust self-expression. Visual, dimmer switch slowly turning up and down. That's not deception. That's social survival. In personality psychology, this trait overlaps with something called high self-monitoring, the tendency to adjust behavior based on social cues. High self-monitors often do well socially, but internally, they can feel fragmented. And because constant adjustment creates a subtle question. If I'm always tuning myself, where do I end and the environment begin? That question is uncomfortable, but it's also revealing, because the issue isn't that you don't have a self. It's that your self has been shaped around harmony. And harmony, while peaceful on the surface, can quietly erase edges. So what's actually happening in your brain when you feel like an imposter? Art 4. Psychological mechanism. Your brain has two major priorities in social settings. Stay connected. Stay safe. Connection activates reward systems, especially dopamine pathways tied to belonging. But social threat activates something else. The amygdala. The amygdala doesn't just react to danger like physical harm. It reacts to rejection, to exclusion, to subtle shifts in tone. Visual, abstract brain animation highlighting amygdala. Here's the metaphor. Imagine your brain has a social radar. It constantly scans for signs of approval or disapproval. If the radar detects risk, even small risk, your prefrontal cortex steps in and adjusts behavior. Tone softens, opinions shrink, energy calibrates. Cause to mechanism to result. Cause, fear of subtle rejection. Mechanism, heightened amygdala sensitivity plus behavioral adjustment via self-monitoring. Result, you blend in, but feel slightly unreal. Over time, this creates what psychologists call identity fragmentation. Not a disorder, just a pattern. Different contexts activate different self-states. Think of your personality like a set of light panels. Visual, multiple light panels turning on and off. Each environment switches on a different combination. The problem isn't that you have multiple panels. Everyone does. The problem is when no single configuration feels chosen. It feels triggered. And when identity feels triggered instead of intentional, you feel like an actor in your own life. So how do you shift from reactive identity to integrated identity? Not by forcing yourself to just be authentic. That advice skips the nervous system. Instead, you work with it. 5. Practical framework. Step 1. Notice the micro adjustments. What to do? Start observing when you subtly change tone, posture, or opinions. Not to stop it, just to notice it. Why it works. Attention activates the prefrontal cortex, which reduces automatic amygdala-driven reactions. Awareness weakens unconscious behavioral loops. Example, you're about to disagree in a group. You feel your chest tighten. Instead of immediately softening your view, you mentally label it. I'm adjusting right now. That pause alone increases identity stability. Visual notebook with one sentence written. I noticed I softened my opinion. Step 2. Stabilize one small preference. What to do? Pick one low-stakes preference and express it consistently. Music choice, food preference, movie opinion. Why it works. Repeated behavioral consistency strengthens neural pathways tied to self-concept. The brain updates identity through action, not thought. Example. Instead of saying, I'm fine with anything, you say, I actually prefer quiet places. Small anchor. And repeated. Identity becomes less fluid. Step 3. Tolerate mild disapproval. What to do? Allow one small moment of social friction without immediately repairing it. Why it works. Exposure therapy principles apply here. When the brain predicts rejection but nothing catastrophic happens, amygdala reactivity decreases over time. Example. You share an opinion. Someone shrugs. Instead of over-explaining, you let the silence sit. Visual. Quiet table scene. Subtle tension. No conflict. Your nervous system learns. I can stay, even if approval dips. That's integration training. Step 4. Reduce post-interaction rumination. What to do? Set a 5-minute timer after social events. Reflect intentionally. When the timer ends, redirect attention physically. Walk, shower, stretch. Why it works. Rumination reinforces threat memory loops in the hippocampus. Time-bound reflection prevents consolidation of exaggerated social fears. Example. Instead of replaying a joke for 2 hours, you think about it for 5 minutes. Then you move your body. The brain receives closure. Step 5. Build identity outside social mirrors. What to do? Engage in one activity alone that reflects who you are without audience feedback. Writing. Learning. Creating. Why it works. Solitary intrinsic motivation activates internal reward systems independent of social validation, strengthening self-definition. Example. You journal honestly, not for posting, not for sharing. Visual. Empty room with sunlight, person writing quietly. You experience yourself without calibration. That's where solidity forms. Art 6. Integration. Here's the model to remember. You don't feel like an imposter because you're fake. You feel like an imposter because your social radar is too dominant. Imagine 2 dials, radar, core. For a long time, radar has been turned up high. Core has been quiet. Your work isn't to turn radar off. It's useful. Your work is to slowly increase core volume. Visual. 2 dials, 1 slowly rising. Every small, consistent expression. Every tolerated pause. Every unedited opinion. And you're teaching your nervous system. Belonging doesn't require disappearance. And over time, the light panels stop flickering. They synchronize, not into one rigid version of you, but into one intentional one. 7. Quiet, empowering close. You were never pretending. You were protecting connection, and that protection once made sense. But you don't have to earn belonging by dissolving into it. On visual, waves, moving slowly. The next time you're with your friends, and that quiet thought appears. If they really knew me, pause, and ask something gentler. What if they're already seeing more than I think? Integration isn't loud. It's subtle. It's the moment you stay, without shrinking, and realize nothing collapses. Maybe that's when you stop feeling like an imposter. Not because you changed personalities, but because you finally stopped leaving yourself